Welcome back to the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, the show that helps families navigate the emotional, logistical, and financial journey of moving a loved one into senior living. I'm Dale Corpus, a senior transition specialist and real estate expert based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm also a part of the sandwich generation, juggling work, raising kids, and trying to figure out care and housing options for aging parents. That's exactly why I started this podcast. Finding clear answers in the senior care world is hard. It's overwhelming, fragmented, and too often families don't know where to turn. This show is my way of simplifying the process and bringing you trusted voices who can help. And today's guest is definitely one of those voices. I'm joined by Adriana Mendez, a certified senior move manager and co-owner of Custom Moving Solutions, a Bay Area-based company that specializes in helping seniors and families with downsizing, packing, moving, and even full-on property cleanouts. She also runs the Sensational Seniors Workshops, free educational programs that empower older adults to take control of their transitions with confidence. In this episode, we're talking about how to downsize without feeling overwhelmed, why decluttering is so emotional and how to let go, how to prepare for a stress-free move to senior living, common mistakes families make during downsizing, and how her Sensational Seniors workshops are changing lives in our community. If you or a loved one is planning to move, downsize, or transition to senior living, you'll want to hear this. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, where we help families navigate senior living, real estate, and everything in between. Hosted by Senior Transition Specialist Dale Corpus, this show brings you expert insights, real solutions, and stress-free strategies to make senior transitions simple. Ready to dive in? Let's go.
All right, everybody, we're back to the show. Good morning, Adriana. How are you this morning?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much, Dale, for having me today.
I'm so excited to have you. This is actually our second time recording this podcast. You guys don't know this, but I had some technical glitches and I was so embarrassed. So I graciously thank you, Adriana, for coming back on the show a second time because the first time was a technical flop.
Worries.
But Adriana, well, again, welcome to the podcast. Can you share a little about how you got into senior move management and what inspired you to start Custom Moving Solutions?
Yeah, so my husband and I are co-owners of Custom Moving Solutions, and we have always believed in sort of building a community around our business. And so very early on, we did a ton of networking. We still continue to do that. And it's really about building those relationships with folks that we work with. And it was through those networking groups that we met someone who does senior placement. And they were like, wow, this is a really good fit. You know, if you guys are interested in kind of joining this world of senior moves. And at the time was something we really hadn't really tapped into. And we started to do some networking and working with placement agents, working with assisted living communities. And we really just kind of had a place in our heart for, you know, helping through that transition, both of us having older loved ones, you know, throughout our lives who we've helped make that transition. It was kind of a natural fit for us. And so we have just sort of started burying our way, you know, burrowing through and making a niche into the senior move space. And my husband and I both just really enjoy that. It's very rewarding.
You know, a lot of that echoes with me too, because I just stumbled upon this space as I also was learning for just resources for my dad that had dementia like 2 years ago. So obviously, I just said I'm part of the sandwich generation, and it's helpful that I've learned a lot of things for myself. And it's also helpful that I've been able to offer resources for even just my own peers, because everybody I went to school with, all my classmates and whatnot, or some of them are reaching out because I'm becoming that resource because we're all part of the sandwich generation.
Yeah.
And it feels very nice to be able to give back. I feel like there's more of a purpose, you know? So going back to what you've got going on, what is a certified senior move manager and how does your role differ from a regular moving company?
Yes, so there is actually a certification process through the National Association of Senior Move Managers. It's a national foundation, and there's people like us all around the country. And it is extra certification in terms of having to do annual continuing education in the field of senior move management. how to work with families who have a loved one with dementia, for example, how to communicate with family dynamics. There's continuing courses like that we have to continue to take, as well as they do additional background checks on for us as owners, as
Yep.
well as our employees, making sure that we have all the insurance and all of the proper protection for us and for our clients. And it's also continuing to join them on conferences annually as well to kind of keep us all connected and staying up to date with what's going on in the industry. And really, a lot of what makes a senior move manager different from a regular move manager is the extra attention to detail, the extra sensitivity to the move, because there's a lot of emotions. I find most of the time is someone's either moving because they've been in their home for a long time and there's a lot of sentimental aspects in that involved, or it's families who are helping their loved one, and it's just a lot to take on
Yeah.
because they're kind of thinking back, and now they're thinking of, okay, what's happening next with my loved one, where is this going, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And so just being there to support through that, and like I said, really just having that experience of understanding the challenges that often come up in these scenarios as kind of part of our daily or weekly workload, is just makes us a very good fit for this group of folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you're already talking about it, but what else makes moving and downsizing for seniors different from a typical move?
Yeah, so and I briefly touched on it, but really the sentimental part of it, the emotional part of it, a lot of people get caught up in their stuff and thinking
Uh-huh.
about, oh my gosh, I have all this stuff and now I have to move. What am I going to do with it? And then where am I going to put things? Who's going to help me? Also, the logistics, the physical capabilities. Of course, as we get older, it becomes more difficult to move in general. And then, of course, packing and moving things around is very difficult. So I would say the emotional and sentimental part of it, as well as the physical capabilities of moving, are challenging for senior moves.
Okay. I want to dive just a little bit deeper into the emotional side of things. So, what are some common emotional challenges seniors face when downsizing, and how do you help them through it?
Yeah, so I think letting go is really hard, feeling overwhelmed. So, people start thinking about, okay, I'm going to start going through my things. Where do I start? How do I let go? So, the first thing for us is usually to kind of come up with a plan and just really advise for folks to start in small areas and to really think about, what do you love? What do you use all the time? What's going to be something that when you move is going to be something that's going to make sense in that new space and something that you're going to continue to use, as well as how can we let things go? That's
Mhm.
hard. I think when we hold on to things, is we hold on to things because of our memories, maybe because of the person that's attached to that item. And sometimes we carry things from people who are no longer with us, and so a lot of people hang on to things and thinking that, well, this is all I have left of them.
Mhm.
And really, we try to coach people in that just because someone is no longer here, it doesn't mean their memory is not here anymore. And it doesn't mean that their memory is tied to specific physical items, because
Mhm.
sometimes those physical items become daunting and they burden us. They take up space, especially if it's going into a downside. We just can't take everything with us.
Mhm.
And so just really helping people just talk about their belongings. Sometimes just really just sitting there, being really patient and, hearing the stories about their belongings, helping document them, maybe photographing things, putting pictures together that could be put together for a scrapbook, recording videos. Those are things that we recommend to try to memorialize sentimental items that they can't necessarily take with them or that don't make sense, or in the process of letting go, sharing stories, and all of those things kind of tied together just helps the journey of downsizing be a little bit more smoother and almost healing in some ways. You almost see some people that, as they're telling stories of their belongings, you can tell that they, A, either have never had anyone to share the stories with, or B, they just never really haven't looked at items in a long time and they've been in the closet for a long time. And having the revisit of those memories is sometimes refreshing for people, and sometimes it is emotional. But again, it's a healing process, and it's all part of the journey.
Yeah. I get that. Now, what's the best way to start the downsizing process without feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, so start small. So we always recommend to pick an area of the home that's not highly used. For example, a guest bedroom, a corner closet, a shelf in the garage, and just start in that little area and do what I call a power hour.
Yeah.
set your timer and just, no distractions, turn off the ringer on your phone, put on some music, whatever gets you motivated to start in that area and just start going through things, sorting things, do I love this? Do I use this? Do I have a duplicate of this?
Mhm.
And sort things, right away so you can get that little section done. And what happens is once you kind of get used to doing that ever so often, you're doing it once a week, maybe you're doing it every other day. It kind of depends on what your timeline is for your move. It starts to become a little easier and you start to understand what you truly find meaningful of your personal belongings. And so and if that helps things will pick up once you, like I said, you get to know yourself and your sorting style.
Mhm.
It's easier and it picks up once you start in those smaller spaces and then work up to the, either more cluttered spaces or the spaces that are more sentimental. You'll have a little bit more resilience by the time you get there.
Okay. A related question is then, how far in advance should families start preparing if they know a senior loved one will be moving?
I mean, always, I think the more time, the better. But I mean, I think somewhere between, 2 and 6 weeks, depending on how quickly the move needs to happen. If it's a downsizing move because someone's moving, they're empty nesters and they don't necessarily have a health crisis happening. And maybe it's just more of a real estate thing. They're working with a real estate agent and they want to have their house on the market, usually obviously as soon as possible, right?
Right.
But to start going through things in a matter of weeks, I would say, like I said, and try to do I think people have a really easy time picking out the things that they know or they're going to take with them, but people become overwhelmed with stuff that they don't really know what to do with because they don't really want it or they don't want to take it. And then they become overwhelmed with what do I do with that stuff? And so we always recommend you pick out the stuff you already know you're going to take. Like I said, that can be really done if you're focused within a couple of weeks. But I would say for the average, most people take 2 to 4 weeks for that. If it's a care move, it's a little bit different because sometimes it's more of a crisis mode. And at that point, it's really like, okay, what clothing items are going to go? What small pieces of furniture are going to go? And usually that can happen in a couple of days. And again, in those moves, you want to just take care of the individual, making sure that they get into their assisted living environment and then deal with all the rest of the stuff afterward.
Yeah. Are there certain items that are commonly kept but should actually be donated or let go of?
Yeah, so any big furniture, and I think it's hard because a lot of people have large furniture
Uh-huh.
that is either kind of like a family heirloom or it's something that they paid a lot of money for. But in the process of downsizing, you really want to maximize your space. And having those huge 12-foot armoires is going to take up so much space. And you really have to think like, okay, what do I want to sacrifice? Like, do I want to have this huge bulky item in my new home where I'm trying to have a light and fresh environment? And so people have a hard time with that, but in most cases it doesn't make sense. And I know it's difficult and it's hard to donate them, but you have to do a little bit of research to donate larger items like that. And then also just like broken down and things that either don't function anymore. I see a lot of people hanging on to, like broken stools or
Uh,
broken heirlooms and things like that, or papers and their kids' artwork from when they were little that's like all crumpled and falling off the paper. That type of stuff is not going to translate well during the move and should just be let go of.
yeah. Now, what are the biggest mistakes people make when trying to downsize and how can they avoid them?
I think the biggest mistake is one is that people wait too long. People get overwhelmed until they get that overwhelmed paralysis and then they don't do anything. And then in the very end, it's kind of like everything's hitting the fan. So really just starting as, pretty much as soon as you know that the move needs to happen is ideal. And also, I think people not asking for help, and that's kind of part of the overwhelmed part of it. People feel like they don't know who to ask for help from. And, it could be asking adult children or friends or neighbors, family members, even professionals. But again, waiting too long to ask for help as well. And I think for the most part, people want to support their loved ones during a move. And so I think asking should be more common. But again, people just feel for one way or another don't like to ask for help. And I think people are more willing to help than people know of.
Yeah. I have a question for you because you're a moving professional. Do you have any favorite tools or methods for organizing or sorting items efficiently?
Yes, so getting proper supplies and having stickers for sorting. So
Okay.
they have, and you can get all different kinds of stickers, whatever you want. They could be Post-its. I like stickers because they stay. Post-its tend to fall off. But going around the house, especially with larger items or even smaller pieces, tagging what you know is going to go with you, do a walkthrough, maybe take a couple days with, if it's a family or a husband and wife, and tagging, okay, yes, this is going to go. No, this is not going to go, different color coded stickers. And then once you start kind of getting into the nitty gritty of like the hall closets and the garage and things like that, as you're sorting, do your piles as you're sorting. So if you know something's going to go with you, put it in the box, like just actively get that going so you don't have to touch things twice. So if it's going, put it in the box. If it's not going, put it in a donation pile. If it's, junk, put it outside in, the side yard or in the dump truck out front. And just actively do that as you're in the process instead of going back and being like, okay, now I packed all the things that I want. What do I do at the, like it's to just like keep things moving. That's a good way to stay organized because then everything's just rolling from there.
Your company, Custom Moving Solutions, offers full service moving solutions. Yeah. Can you walk us through what a typical downsizing and moving process looks like when working with you?
Yeah, so all of our clients, we start off with a free consultation. I feel like that's really where I like to tell people we're like the wedding planner of moving. So we come in and we're really just taking a big look at what your timeline is. What other professionals are you working with? What are their expectations? Are there other family members involved? And then physically looking with our eyes at how much stuff the individual or the family has in their home to get an idea of how long is this going to take, how much labor, how much supplies, and also meeting with the clients too to start building the rapport. And because, we're going to be in their home handling all their personal things. And so it's really important that they know us and like us and trust us and our team to come in and support them. And that usually helps put people at ease too, knowing that we're very personable. We have cell phones where you can call us, text us, reach out. Just yesterday, my husband was on the phone for about 20 minutes with a client, just kind of walking her through with, hey, this is based on when we were at your home. This is what you've done. This is what you should continue to do. So helping keep people in line with that aspect. And then we'll usually plan a couple of packing days. Usually packing happens separately from the actual move day. It's a lot. It's too much to do packing and moving in one day for folks. And so for the most part, we'll usually plan packing days where we'll come in and bring all the supplies and just start packing, the kitchen or the garage or the bedrooms, the clothing and things like that. And then move day is usually just facilitating the actual logistics of moving the boxes and the larger furniture. And then, of course, moving. Sometimes people are moving nearby. Sometimes they're moving to other areas in California, of course, in the Bay Area. Yep. We've got a lot of different price ranges here. Some people are moving locally. Some people are moving in other areas. And then if they need help on the other end, we could be helping to unpack, or we could be staying back at the house, having some of our guys do junk hauling or moving some of the things so they can get the property clear for the real estate agent to come in and prepare the home. We could be moving things to storage. Sometimes people don't know where they're moving next, so we'll be moving things into a storage container until whether that be pods or an actual storage facility while they figure out, what their next steps are. So it can kind of range for folks, but it's really about offering that full range of services in-house and giving people options so that they don't have to be scrambling with a bunch of different vendors.
Okay, that makes sense. And you're like the center of it all, almost like the quarterback, being able to just manage all of the resources, everything that's going on, right?
Exactly.
For any listeners or viewers that don't know you or your business yet, where are you located and what areas do you cover?
Yes, so our office is in Danville, California, which is kind of Tri-Valley area. That's mostly, honestly, where I just go to do some of our paperwork and keep our marketing supplies because my husband and I are both on the road all the time. I mean, I do my seminars and my events, and my husband does all of the walkthroughs and the consultations, the client check-ins, stopping in on jobs. So, I mean, we really could be anywhere in the Bay Area at any given point during the week. But I would say for the most part, we're in the East Bay Area, at some of our jobs. We are licensed in the whole state of California. So I mentioned before is that sometimes we're moving folks out of this area. They get more bang for their buck in other areas, or perhaps they have family in other areas, so they have a better support circle in those places. So yeah, and it's just really, a lot of our work here tends to be Contra Costa, Alameda County, but again, it can expand further from that based on what our clients' needs are, because we really try to fit, whatever their timeline is and whatever their next home could be into our timeline.
Okay, noted. Now, I know you also do full property cleanouts. How does that work? And when would a family need that service?
Yeah, so full property cleanouts tend to be either after the home has been vacated. So somebody's moved and they've already taken everything with them to their new home and we move them in over there. We'll usually do a clean out of what's left. So again, like I said, so the real estate agent can come in, make the house all pretty, stage it, give photos and things like that. It's one scenario. Another scenario is if someone has passed away, a lot of times the adult children or the loved ones will come in or the heirs will come in and kind of choose what they want and what's meaningful to them, and they'll call us and say, hey, it's ready, we're ready to do a clean out because for the most part they're going to get the house ready for the market. And so we'll do sort of a dispersal service at that point. We'll come in and we'll haul some of the things that can't be reused, but we'll do donation, recycling and things like that, and just again clear out the property in that aspect.
What should families look for when choosing a moving company for a senior transition?
Definitely look for word of mouth reputation. I think asking around to see who people have used before, what their online reputation is. Google reviews are really important. Looking for insurance, licensing. California has a licensing portal for movers. Like checking on the insurance is also listed there. And then just, calling them and seeing, are they responsive? Do they answer their phones? I think a big part of it is just how do you feel about the person's personality? Because you're going to be spending quite a bit of time planning with this person and this company and, checking to see that they're not outsourcing some of their services, because then, the quality can go down or it can just become very difficult to communicate with someone who's third partying out some of their services.
Okay, great. Now I want to segue into something different. Let's pivot into talking about sensational seniors workshops and community education.
Mhm.
So, Adriana, you are more than just a moving company. In fact, before I knew you were a mover, I knew you through your senior education events. You are quite a strong house of education for seniors, and that's how I first knew about you. And then I was like, oh, wait, she's a mover too. So I wanted you to talk about, tell us more about Sensational Seniors Workshops. What inspired you to start them, and what do they offer to the senior community?
Yes, thank you so much. Sensational Seniors is kind of my baby. It's kind of my dedication to the community is through Sensational Seniors. And I think that when I would say it really started after COVID when it was about 2021 since I've been doing these events. And I really just saw that there was a big need for seniors to come out and start being social again, because so many seniors, and it was so sad for me and hard for me to see how isolated people became during COVID. And I really wanted to create a space for people to come out, have a little lunch, have some snacks, meet some new faces, and just have an opportunity to come out of the house and do something social, something fun. And I started just bringing in my networking colleagues, my colleagues who fit in the many puzzle pieces of life transitions, whether it be, aging in place for some folks or thinking about a transition, bringing in colleagues from a variety of different spaces to come in and speak on educational topics, environment that doesn't feel it's a no pressure environment. It's really just information, again, about empowering seniors to understand what their choices are and understand that they're supported and understand that there are a lot of local professionals who really just want to be there as a resource and support folks so that when they do make the decision, they have that, people that they can reach out to that they've met before in person. Because I know, especially for older people, it's so overwhelming and daunting to go online and the rabbit hole of when you type things in on the search and, who's legit, who's not, who's an actual human versus like a robot online. And I just wanted to create that community with seniors. I just love older adults. I love just seeing them on the regular and, hey, how was your week? Or even diving deeper, what did you do for work and how did that shape who you are now? And if you could go back, I've always just had a thing for hearing older stories from older adults. And I just have found it to be really rewarding. And it's a great way also for me to allow my colleagues to learn how to educate on the things that they do. Because a lot of people in their profession, it could be, for example, fiduciaries. Not a lot of people know what fiduciaries do, and just getting that information out there and for people understanding, okay, we're all in this together and we can help support each other's businesses as well as supporting the community through the seniors. And is kind of tying all those pieces together. And it's been really great. It's transitioned from doing one location of Sensational Seniors workshops to over the years, I think I have maybe 4 to 6 different locations I vary from. And then senior resource fairs are the bigger events that I've started doing. And I think that's going to continue to grow. And as I continue to try to tap into a larger audience of seniors and their adult children, and just for them to understand that, there's a wealth of professionals here that can support them. And we're here as an empowering source of resources and information.
What's the frequency of these workshops? Are you typically trying to do something every month? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so I have something, at least every other week. So I do something about twice a month, sometimes more. It depends on the season. Usually in the summer, people tend to travel, so I don't do so many seminars during the summer, but pretty much for the rest of the year, I'm doing at least 2 seminars in the East Bay area,
Yep.
and they're free. And like I said, usually at least one of them has a lunch, but usually, like I said, there's snacks and drinks. We have a raffle. We have a good time. So you can always visit sensationalsenior.net, and that's where I keep all of my seminars there. You can sign up there as well as learn more about some of the speakers.
Now, what are some of the most valuable takeaways that attendees get from these workshops?
Yeah, so I think it's one is having an actual local professional that they can reach out to, because most of the professionals, I would say probably all of them offer free consultation. So just knowing that they can have that resource and a phone number of someone that they can call and just ask a question for, again, it's that personal relationship building with the colleagues as well as the attendees with the folks who are there. And sometimes, I feel like we're all like-minded, and then if it's not something we can help with, most likely we have someone that we can refer to for the attendee to, make sure that they get the help that they need, or get their questions answered. So it's just a nice resource of real life people who are professionals who do this every day and who specialize in senior services.
Okay, that's good. And now let's pivot into common senior moving challenges and some industry insights. What are the biggest misconceptions about senior move management?
I would say that people feel like as senior move managers, we're just going to come in and throw everything away. That's like the biggest fear that people have. And I think that it's reassuring people that, look, like we want to help you be a part of this. We want to help you find ways to sort through your things. We want for you to take the things that are most meaningful for you into your new home and help disperse the other items. And I've seen that people have heard that before. People have told us that they've had vendors show up and they literally show up with just dump trucks and, a clipboard and want to just toss everything, and without taking into consideration that a lot of seniors are emotionally attached to their things, and it's a process, and you have to allow them the space for the sentimental part to be experience, and that's something that takes a little bit of time. So it's not something that can be one and done in a couple hours. It takes a little bit of time and planning.
Yeah. Now, what advice would you give to families who are just starting to think about a senior transition but feel stuck?
Yeah, that I would say to just start having a conversation with your family and with your loved ones, especially, the sandwich generation folks, start talking to your parents about what items are meaningful to you and asking them, hey, do you plan on, gifting things? Do you plan on donating things? Because sometimes we see that older adults have a plan in their mind of what they're going to leave to their adult children, and they've never had that conversation. And then the adult children, for example, we show up if someone's passed away and they were like, well, there's all this stuff and I don't have the space for it. I don't want this. It's not my style, whatever it is. And so having that conversation ahead of time so that, everyone's clear about the expectations and who wants what. And of course, making sure that that's at least documented, the whole estate plan, things like that, or a will is set up in place. So again, having those conversations, setting expectations, and then just asking people, how involved do you want to be? For adult children, some of them want to help. They want to help mom and dad go through their things because they want to hear those stories and they want to allow their parents to experience a downsize move in a way that's empowering for them. So I think it really starts there. And then from there, coming up with a plan, either the family can work on it together or think about bringing in professionals to help support that. It's really about bringing in support and how they can either support each other or have additional support through professionals.
Okay, got it. Now, I know you've done so many moves, and I have a fun question, just out of curiosity. What's the most unique or unexpected item you've ever helped a client move?
Oh gosh, there's so many, but I would say recently, this year, a couple of months ago, we had a gentleman who was downsizing and he was a world traveler, and everywhere he went, he would collect these carved wooden canes,
Okay.
which are actually a very collectible item. Like I looked it up and I was like, wow, there's actually a lot of these and some of them are very valuable. And he must have had hundreds of them. And he had little displays all around his house where he was displaying, and each head of the canes were carved different. Like one of them was a face and another one would be an animal. And so it was just really, really interesting to see how many, the sheer volume, and then additionally the art and the craftsmanship that went into all these. And so, of course, we had to wrap all of them very delicately. Some of them were actually getting moved. We moved some of his items to an auction house because he had quite a few valuable items that would go live on an online auction. And then some of those were just getting moved into his home. Some of the items we actually packed, and his daughter shipped those off to her home in LA. So that was really interesting. But we see quite a few different collections that people have.
Nice. Now, if you could give one piece of downsizing advice to every senior, what would it be?
I would say just start decluttering now and start looking at your things again. What do you use on the regular? What items do you love? What things are meaningful to you? And everything else should really be passed, donate it, give it to someone else who could use it, junk it if it's trash, and really just declutter your space so that your home, whether you're aging in place or moving, making a transition in 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years, is really a space of fresh and clear environment so that you can thrive in that environment. Because being in a cluttered space, we all know, is not good for our sanity and for our stress. And so, regardless of where you're at in that, is just decluttering and just really thinking about your belongings and what they mean to you and are they truly serving their purpose.
Got it. Now, one of my last questions is, what's the most rewarding part of your work in senior move management?
The most rewarding part by far is seeing a family make a transition and kind of understand that they have an ally. They have someone who's there by their side, and almost seeing the relief drain into their face after, sometimes we show up to do a consultation
Yeah.
and people are just like white as a ghost. They're overwhelmed, deer in
Yeah.
the headlights. And then as we're talking, you can literally see in their body, they're just starting to relax and they're just almost smiling and they're starting to see, okay, there's a light at the end of this tunnel.
Hmm.
Because moving is hard, moving is daunting, regardless of what phase you're at in life or who is moving, whether it's you or your loved one. It's a lot to take on because it's both a physical and an emotional thing. So seeing the relief that it brings people, because we do this so often, it's
Yeah.
it's kind of like second nature to us, but for other people, for regular residents, it's just not that case. And so being able to bring our expertise and our experience in and just plan things from start and get things moving for people. And then once they move in, it's just kind of seeing that full spectrum and that sense of relief and that sense of support for our clients is really, really rewarding, especially for older folks who sometimes don't have the support. And for us being able to be that for them
Yeah.
and knowing that we're there with complete transparency and honesty and truly love for our clients,
Right.
and treating our clients in the way that we would want for our family members to be treated, and being able to provide that is very, very rewarding.
Okay, got it. Now, and lastly, do you have any final words? Is there anything I should have asked you that we didn't cover yet? And how can families even connect with you to learn more about your services?
Yeah, I really, like I said, I know we talked a little bit about decluttering, but I still think that that's really important, making sure that regardless of what that timeline is, keeping the home decluttered is, and a decluttered home is also a safe home. So, of making sure that, especially for older adults, that things are up off the floor, the home is kind of organized so
Yeah.
that, we don't want any falls and things like that. So home safety is really important for aging in place as well as for moving. So when we move into a new home, setting things up in a way that are safe for the individual or for the family is really important. And we have quite a few of those tips and checklists on our website, custom-movers with an s.com. I try to have checklists and resources there, timelines and guides. All those things are up on our website. And that's a good way to kind of, if you're thinking about this process in the near future, but haven't quite come up with a date, that's a good place to start. or if you're ready to do a consultation and you really just need someone to help guide you for setting up a timeline for you and for chatting with us about supplies and the logistics, you can call us at 925-895-4411.
Got it. And you're on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
Instagram is Custom Moving Solutions.
Perfect. Adriana, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome. Your compassion and practical insights are exactly what so many families need during what can be a really stressful season. You're doing such meaningful work, and I know our audience is walking away with some powerful takeaways today. And for those of you watching or listening, if your loved one is considering senior living and you need to figure out what to do with their home, let's talk. Schedule a free consultation with me by clicking on the Calendly link in the video description box on YouTube. Learn more about my services at www.simplifyseniortransitions.com. Have a quick question, DM me at Instagram at Soul by Dale. If you found this interview helpful, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more families find this show. And don't forget to share this episode with someone who could use the guidance. Thanks again for tuning in. One last thanks, Adriana, for being on the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'll see everyone else on the next episode of the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast.